got Veronica Westendorf with us today, or as sometimes we call her V, who is with
VW.
Pardon me?
VW.
VW.
She told me I could call her VW.
Oh, that's a new one. Anyway, she was Westin Design Landscape Architecture, and I know there's a lot to that description. I mean, when I think of landscape architecture, I think of somebody that's going to plan, where I plant grass.
Well,
now, you do that, but you do a lot more, right?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because landscape architecture isn't very well understood for a profession that's been around for a couple hundred years. Landscape architects are sort of design masters, and I think about myself as a networker in the true sense, is that I sit in the middle of this web of resources and connect people. So the real thing that I do is I design a space that provides for public health, safety, and welfare, but there are lots of ways to do that. So it could be anything from a residential design, a small courtyard, to a large master plan for a city. And the other day I was joking about, well, when you buy your island, I'll help you design the whole layout of the island, and how that city planning
paints a nice
works.
picture.
Yeah, doesn't it though?
It really does. Well, you talk about sustainability and innovation and all that sort of thing. I know now, if I was redoing my backyard and I needed to know where to put a wall and where to put a fountain, I mean, you do that sort of thing, right? But your real specialty is on energy efficiency and sustainable things. And am I right on that? Isn't that what your big focus is?
But like this small business talk that you guys or the article you were just reading, it's sometimes the real movers and shakers in changing the way we look at development or resources is really grassroots. It's the small homeowner, it's the individual, and if you can educate them and help them change their space and make it new and unique or more functional for them, and put in these resources, you've got a better space overall for the whole. We could get global and say the whole world, right?
Okay, let's back up. First of all, give them your company name and how they could reach you if they wanted to reach you.
My company name is Westin Design. It's an abbreviation of my last name. And I can be reached either through my website, westindesignplcc.com, or email me at westindesign2@gmail.com. Those are both the best ways to get me, since I spend so much time running around from client to client and activity to activity with my family.
So now, my brother is an architect. He got a master's degree from Columbia University, and I know that your industry is perceived as this profession, right? But it really is a small business that's very challenging. Yeah. Let's talk about this. Because I know this type of industry is sort of a love affair, right? I know, I can understand that. Right. But at some point you had to realize, I actually got to charge for this, because I can tell, I met you a short period of time, you'll do it for free because you just love doing it, right? So,
that's been a real hard challenge.
Talk a little bit about that, because what most people listening don't understand is professionals really are small business people, and that move from a love to a real business is a challenge to do.
Well, the last one you talked about is that people do business with other people. So part of this profession is that I love people and I love helping them, and I help educate them and help make their spaces beautiful. And realizing that, I need to eat was really hard for me. It's usually when we're sitting at the table, I'm looking at the girls going, hey, we can have ramen noodles again tonight. That realization came. But then I also realized that I'm willing to pay people for their expertise happily. And if I'm offering an expertise, which I think I really do have, after 25 years, I think I finally start to know this business, right?
You're allowed to call yourself an expert. Go right ahead.
There you go. I'm an expert in all sorts of stuff. Just ask my daughters. So I want to offer them a service, and I want to help them reach that goal. And part of it is just respecting myself and the information I have to offer. I learned the hard way pretty early on that if I give too much information out in the first meeting, they will take that information and hire somebody else and build my design. And so I've kind of learned to modify how I reach out to people.
That happens in a lot of businesses.
I'm going to give you a piece of advice that I took from Wayne, because Wayne gave it to a client we had on the show last week that I really loved. And Wayne had helped a client come up with a statement, which was a what did Brian say?
I don't even know where you're going.
Yeah,
with
where I'm going with it is the guarantee, design guarantee. If you can find somebody that gives a better design, we won't charge you for the design. And I love that statement because what it does is it takes the fear out of, are you going to capture the feeling that I'm after?
Yeah.
Talk about that, because you and I both know that every man should have a pleasant place. I got a place in my yard that I sit, relax, watch the water, and smoke a cigar. Every man needs a pleasant place. My wife has her place. She calls it the happy hangout. She's got her place, right? Yeah. And so that really is a feeling that we're asking you to help us with. Right. How do you find that and get that? Because it can't be easy.
Well, Ian McHarg was a landscape architect he passed away about 5 years ago, and he had this system of layering context. So starting at the site level, because I can't design you a place that's yours, whether we're talking about a residential design or a huge commercial development like Brookdale. If there's going to be a place that has ownership and meaning, I have to understand the users. And so Ian McHarg used to do things like take the topography and the aspect and the wind and the sun, and this is where alternative energies come into it, and make layers of these pieces of information. And then the user becomes an incredibly important piece. So if you have this outdoor space that you love, but you have a dog who digs holes in the middle of it all the time, then I've failed you as a designer to understand what's really happening in that space. Part of why some of these other developments are so successful is they've thought about who the user is. If it's a hangout for teenagers after 9 o'clock until their parents pick them up after the movie, there's got to be a place for that. If it's a place for you to walk your dog, where you can have a chance to let the dog run or sniff or look around, then I'm succeeding by giving these places for the users, regardless of who the owner is. If it's a place that makes your neighbors happy because they don't see you laying out in the backyard, then, again, I'm successful in doing that.
Right. And that's not easy to do, because a lot of times when you're talking to me, I'm not sure what I want.
Yes. So the way I work with clients is I want to meet with you first. And I generally meet for half an hour and say, I'm not going to charge you because I want to see if we're a good match. Do I understand you as a person? Do you understand me as a designer? Are we on the same page? And I feel like that half hour is worth, $1,000 contract, so that we know we're in the same place. And after that, I go back and I take about an hour and I throw down 3 different concepts on trace paper, or we call it trash paper, with a couple Sharpies, and I promise my clients I really can draw. I really can. But I'm not going to waste your time on a concept, I'm like, ho, 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 ho. And I do 3 because sometimes when I see a space, I get something in my head right away, like, oh, it should look like this. And I overlook other opportunities that are completely different. So I might reach out to you with a really traditional kind of design, but then I'm going to throw you something really cutting edge and modern, and see how you respond to that. So then we get back together, and I lay out these little sketches, and I talk about the feeling that I'm trying to evoke with each one, and I read you. What's your response? And it's really interesting how people respond, because sometimes they tell me, I want a traditional patio, I want a fountain, or we want a common open space where kids can read. But then when you show them these different pictures, they're like, wow, I really like that. And
welcome to my world. The client really doesn't know what they want.
Well, I think that's great because, like Joe said, and I'm the same way, I've got to see it before I know if I like it, which would make your job really tough unless you could capture it, like you said, on paper somehow so I could see it, because I'm terrible at
Well, the other great thing is with technology, there are other websites that I can use to create storyboards or idea boards and show you, okay, these are the pictures that I'm seeing when I look at this design, because a lot of people can't read plans either. They say they can read a plan, and you lay a plan down in front of them, and it's like a map, and they start turning it. Okay, where are we on this page?
Sure.
And then I know, it helps me understand who I'm working with.
One of the other things, and I know we've only got about a minute, and we'll come back, but one of the other things that you do so well, what plants will work so that all year long you can have your space sort of be alive based on what it is it's planted at what time, blooming at different times. That's not easy to do, and that takes a lot of skill to do.
That is one of the hardest things. You come out of school and you think you know so much. And landscape architects are only required to do basic woody plants. We know shrubs and trees. And this is where that understanding of planting design is something that evolves as you age, I think, when you get your own space and you can plant it.
Careful,
and
you get me to show your age. Be
I know. I'm like, oh, pull it up. Designers don't peak till they're in their 60s. I got a little ways to go.
Okay.
That's what I think. But I've spent a lot of time researching plants and learning about plants because there's an ecological implication. And then I worked in Germany for one summer for a company called Renature. I guess I was 19 at the time. And the European countries were facing this crisis of no pollinators and insects in the city anymore, which we tend to forget means no food sources. And this idea of our urban impact changing the ability to receive food is really kind of scary. And so working with residential clients, or even I'm hoping more commercial clients can be swayed this way, to include plants that are native, that are pollinators, that have that 4 seasons of interest, and even better, that are edible, that you can use as a food source to help educate yourself, is really a big deal for me.
Interesting. So, you know, one of the things that my wife and I love to do, I can't remember exactly what it is. It's some sort of, you can apply for some sort of nature backyard or something like that. I know for someone like you, it's kind of silly, but my wife and I, we like that kind of stuff, you know. And what they made us do was draw out our yard. Yeah. And that was not easy to do.
I think it's a wildlife habitat certification.
Yes. And I really like that. One of the things they ask for is how many different plants do you have that bird stuff can eat from and that sort of stuff. And by the time we were finished, we realized, gosh, just about everything in the yard. That's why we got so many birds in the yard. And squirrels and all
exactly.
that.
That's kind of cool.
But that process of going through that was really interesting. Talk about how you educate the client on what they think they're asking for.
Oh, yeah. I spend a lot of time sharing information, and sometimes it's through emails and sending links. And more effectively, though, it's talking one-on-one. And part of my marketing is, and part of my love, too, is to go out and speak to different groups. So just last week, I was at the Huntersville Rotary talking about pollinators. Before that, I've talked about the American lawn and the impact it's had on, wildlife and heat in the cities. And so there are a lot of different topics that I like to talk about.
I'm not getting rid of my sprayer. I'm just telling you right now, the weeds got to go. I know where you're headed with this, and I'm not going to do.
One of the things that you see when you travel in Europe is that
BioGreen. I'm keeping my BioGreen. I'm just telling you that right now, okay? Let's be clear about this. I'm keeping my BioGreen. Actually, I think my BioGreen's probably okay.
Yeah, no, we just want to reduce the amount of area that we're treating. Like, make your lawn the focal point. Don't make it the background. Make it your focal point. That's, that soft, lush green grass. You take your shoes off and you put your bare feet in and you crinkle your toes in.
Oh,
it's awesome. But why waste it as the background? Let it be your focus.
That's an interesting concept. All right, before we let you go, tell us again your name of your company and how they can get hold of you, because you will help them with anything, right? With their landscape architecture. You just happen to be a world above everybody else and some of these other things you've done. And incidentally, we didn't get time to get to your long list of projects because you've helped cities around here that people might be interested in hearing about. But anyway, tell them how they can get hold of you.
My name's Veronica Westendorf. My company is Westin Design Landscape Architecture. And the best way to reach me is probably email westindesign2@gmail.com. That's WESTENDESIGN2@gmail.com. And my website is westindesignpllc.com.
Give that website one more time. This is radio, they got to hear it twice.
You got to be able to write it down. westindesignpllc.com.
And one more thing before we go to break. Talk to the small business people out there, the small professionals that are out there. How do you market yourself in a way that you reach new clients? What advice would you give them?
For me, it's all about networking. Right now, 90% of my work comes directly from word of mouth referrals. It's keeping my clients
That's where we
happy.
met, as a matter of fact.
Yep. It's about building relationships with people. It's about being willing to be involved, being willing to share what I know without any kind of proprietariness. I always tell people I don't have an ego. I mean, there's no big ego you're going to step on. If you need help with something, I'll help. And if it's not something I can help you with, I'm going to refer you to someone else because I don't want to drown in that mess.